So welcome everyone to our panel discussion on navigating workplace challenges as professional women. As you know, March is Women's History Month, and in the spirit of supporting the women in our professional network, we've come together to talk about topics like breaking the professional barriers that women face in the workplace, the magic of mentorship and networking, and what it really means to achieve that ever elusive workplace balance. So we're all in a position to talk about the hurdles and the opportunities that come with being a professional woman in the workforce. And some of us can add, I think, extra insight related to the industry, whether it's financial services in general or wealth management more specifically. So I'm looking forward to hearing about your experiences, your insights, and your advice when it comes to overcoming challenges that are unique to women in the workplace.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And on behalf of Women Empowerment Network, which we refer to as WEN, I just want to thank all of you, my Kestra Holdings peers, for joining us here today and sharing your time and your experiences. As you know, WEN is a community dedicated to supporting women in financial services by offering opportunities to share strengths, talents and experiences with one another. And we couldn't pass up the opportunity to share some of those things with all of you and recognize Women's History Month at the same time. So let's start by introducing ourselves. I think name, position, and a piece of advice that you wish you had been given earlier in your life and career. And I'll kick it off. I'm Angela Osborne. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Blue Spring Wealth Partners. And I think the piece of advice I wish I had received is, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think we're often too afraid to ask for what we deserve or even what we want. And that fear by, not asking, it's an automatic no. And I wish I had known that and more importantly, practiced that throughout my earlier career. And look, if you ask, you're often surprised at what you will receive. And if you don't get what you're asking for, you still got something. And that's a really important piece of information you can use to be successful next time. So I'd love to hear what you ladies have to say. And I'm going to start with you, Karen.
Well, thank you. So I'm Karen Bean Giamondo. I'm Vice President of Investment Products, and I run a lot of the products and platforms for Kestra. My one big piece of advice, because I came out of business school in the 80s and they told us we could have it all. Other than being an Adele song, I don't think that was true. What the advice that I learned later on in life, it was about prioritization. So instead of trying to have it all, prioritizing what I needed. And that's really what I would love to pass along to the next gen.
Yeah, I love that. Important. So true as well.
That's the key.
Chris.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chris McLaughlin, Chief Marketing Officer for Kestra Holdings. And I think the piece of advice I got was, if you feel uncomfortable, you're probably growing. So don't fear being uncomfortable.
That's so hard, though.
It is hard.
Important.
It is hard.
Good advice. Good.
Yeah. I'm Kara Murphy, Chief Investment Officer at Kestra Investment Management. So the piece of advice that I wish I had taken when I was younger was to really be more deliberate about building my network. And that's men and women. But I think early on, I just sort of thought, no, if I just keep my head down and keep working, it'll all work out. But I've gotten so much value out of relationships with you women, with other individuals that I've worked with and met over time. And it's become really, really important to my success. And if I'd started earlier, I think my life would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that is great advice, and that's a piece of advice that I didn't get until later in my career. And I'd like to think that I've caught up a little bit. Yeah. Thanks to some of you around this table. So I'm Chris Chester. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kestra Financial, and we clearly did not rehearse this because my piece of advice is similar to Karen's, only a little bit different. While Karen's is you can't have it all, I actually think that you can, but you can't have it all at the same time. And like Karen, I was raised from a very young age. My parents, hey, you can be whatever you want to be. You can have whatever you want. And I embraced that through college and early in my career. And when I started having children, I realized that I really couldn't have it all at the same time. And it was all about prioritizing what is most important to you and your family and your career at that time.
Yeah.
You can have it all. It just might be spaced out over, a few decades.
So very true.
So we're looking forward to hearing from you all. So we're going to post some questions to you leaders in a roundtable format. And I'd like to start with this. What are some of the common barriers or obstacles that you faced in your career journey? And what would your advice be to other women experiencing similar challenges? Chris, would you like to start?
I think one of the things that I would say to all women in particular, but everybody, is get comfortable speaking in public. There are going to be times where you're at the front of the room, you're behind a podium, or you're handed a microphone in a town hall meeting, or you're just speaking up in a meeting. And to get ahead, you need to be a concise and powerful communicator. So find every opportunity to stand up and be that person.
Yeah.
From my point of view, we're just always the minority in the room when it comes to female professionals, and just owning your own space and owning that you have a right to be there, that you have something to contribute, that you are there for a reason, and not looking at the demographics and saying to yourself, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
And that's just been a huge obstacle throughout my career in other industries, not just in wealth management, but that's, you really got to fake it till you make it type of thing.
Hey, that's worked really well for me my entire career.
And so just owning that, being your own person in that space and say, I have a right to be here.
Because you're right, it's oftentimes we are maybe not just one of a few, but we may be the only woman in the room. And I remember a time I was in a series of meetings and I was the only female, all men. And one of the men asked me if I ever was uncomfortable or felt out of place, and I really didn't know what he meant. And when he said, well, you're the only woman in the room, and I had to stop and think about it because I hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
But
You get so used to it.
right. I'm just so used to it, and I go, I don't know. Let me think about it. No, I don't feel uncomfortable. It's how it always is, and it's how it's always been in my role, and so I embrace it. Actually, and I encourage other women, the younger women who are just entering financial services or wealth management, tell them it's okay. It's okay that you don't see a lot of other women, in this career and in the role that you want. It's okay. Embrace it. You have a lot to add, right? That perhaps a male counterpart wouldn't be able to add by virtue of the fact that you're a woman.
And I was going to ask, do you think that these obstacles are more prevalent in the financial services industry? I mean, is there anything that, aside from what you've shared?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And, when I think about, I started in the business 25 years ago, 10% of portfolio managers were women. Actually, I think it was 9%. And today, guess what? It's 9%. So there are other fields like law and medicine where women have really made great strides. And for whatever reason, there are certain areas of finance where there's been very limited sort of change in the gender balance. And I, in my mind, like the great irony is that if you look at statistics, there are a lot of studies that have shown that women actually make better investors than men. And this has been replicated among different populations, different time periods, and it's fairly consistent. And so here we have a lot of women who are maybe dissuaded from joining the business because they don't see a lot of other women. But the fact is they actually have a better track record than men. So it goes to your point of you got to just be comfortable with being uncomfortable and get in there and do your thing.
And I think that highlights, at least for me, the importance of us as professional women of being mentors and allies to other women that are coming up in the career, because there are so few of us. So what are some of the strategies for building and maintaining that professional network, which is so important for mentorship and allyship?
I think mentors most oftentimes come from people that know you and know your work well. So oftentimes it's people you've worked with in the past managers, past colleagues. So as you evolve your career, and this gets to building your network, keep them in your network because they're a natural foundation already. And then thinking about allies can be those that support your careers, and they can also be the allies that are in the room when decisions are being made about your career. And you particularly want to cultivate those people and make sure that they know your work firsthand. So when that door closes and they're talking about who's up for the promotion, you want to have a bunch of people around that table who know your work, can speak positively about it, and recommend you. So you become the obvious choice to fill the role.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
And to my earlier point, you have to have the confidence to be able to ask for what you want and make sure that those people that are in those rooms know exactly what you're looking for. And equally, you have to, have an open mind and be open to receiving feedback if you're not
right.
successful, because that will help you be more successful in the future.
And Angela, you mentioned feedback. The other piece of advice that I thought about giving was, and which I wish that I would have heard earlier on in my career, is that feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
Feedback is your friend, and you need to be open to receiving it, and you need to be willing to act on it. And as a mentor, as an ally, you need to be willing to give that feedback to others. And sometimes it's not just to one of your team members or to a peer. It could be to your manager. And there's a really a fine art in being able to give that feedback and to receive that feedback in a way, right, that's most valuable to you and to those who you work with.
Yeah.
I think that is so important. And it's funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to like good relationships I've had with mentors and mentees. And I think the feedback is a really important one, asking for help in addition to feedback when you need it.
That's right.
But also showing gratitude, right? So being able to take those moments, whether you're the mentor or the mentee, to say like, you did a great job in this, or I'm so thankful, to have your feedback, whatever it might be. But
Spot on.
that really helps build that relationship as well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the questions I like to ask as I've established a relationship and comfortable with them is to say, what are my blind spots? What are things that I don't know that I should know? And interestingly, you'll find things that you need to develop, but you're also going to hear things that you're good at that you didn't realize anybody else noticed, or something you
Because you
didn't
take it for granted.
or you didn't think you were good at it. And they said, you do this consistently, and I really admire you for it. So get that feedback and ask, what are your blind spots? What is it that you should know that you don't know?
Yes.
That's a really good point, because feedback isn't just about finding out the things that you need to change. It's
Yes.
about finding out the things you need to keep doing.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
to do
true.
more of.
Yeah, exactly. So, Karen, you're a member of our Women Empowerment Network.
Yes.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on obstacles, but also on the networking aspect and how WEN has helped you and how you, in particular, have helped others with that kind of networking and uplifting.
Yeah, no, I love talking about the Women's Empowerment Network because we get to touch so many different parts of the organization. It's the female professionals out in their offices, it's their staff, it's other female professionals inside of Kestra and the younger generation. And that is where I have just so much passion around helping our younger generation just get more involved. And yes, it's wealth management, and yes, it's operations, and yes, it's about all these things. But what can they do to prepare for a better career? How can I help them? What is something that I can bring? And I can do that under the veil of WEN, as being, kind of carrying that flag and not like, well, why is she talking to me? Oh, no, this is WEN, and this is what we do, and this is how we do it. And one of the things that I'm super passionate about, Chris, to talk about something you mentioned is, speaking skills.
Yes.
And I love to take our interns and younger associates who are interested, because some will just say, can I sign up for your class? And I said, absolutely, because we want to teach them how to communicate very quickly and succinctly. And that is often with just simple thoughts of tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, and I'll go back to faking it till I make it again. You like that once in a while.
I do.
Yes.
I do. I like it a lot.
And so, that's just, again, under the veil of WEN and just under supporting folks and delivering a skill that I found great passion around years ago.
Yeah. It's tremendous.
And that's one of my favorite parts of the internship program is at the end when all of the interns are required to give a presentation to a room full of executives. Talk about intimidating, but they are so well prepared thanks to
Karen
you for your
prepares
guidance
them.
and your leadership.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
and I will
so
tell
fun.
you, those interns can present in a way that I never could at that age. They are so well
Same.
put together. I'm not sure I can actually present that well at this age.
I think
I assure you you can. I assure you can.
An accent will help you get away with all kinds of things.
There you go. I love it.
So one of the goals of our Women Empowerment Network is to promote inclusivity So, Kara, do you have any thoughts on how an organization can promote a more inclusive culture, one that supports women, but also others in the workplace?
Yeah, and I think about this a lot because I think it's particularly important in an investment context. And the first thing is, if you want to create an inclusive environment, you have to make it a priority. You got to work for it.
Yes.
And when I think about important investment decisions, it's so critical to the process that within my team that we challenge each other. And for that to happen and happen well, you need people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different educations, experiences. And that's not just gender, right? That comes out in a whole lot of ways. But if we're able to do that, we're able to end up with a better answer or solution. And there's a lot of studies that show more diverse teams actually make better decisions, but they're also harder to manage. Right? And so this is why we need to sort of understand why it's important. It's because it makes our business better, and we need to really work towards that end.
Yeah.
No,
And
that's great point.
And I think it's also really important to have an environment, whether it's, starting with the culture, but just a culture that creates an environment where people feel safe to be able to share those different perspectives.
That's right.
absolutely.
And to bring their authentic self to work.
Exactly. So,
And I think the other thing is creating those opportunities. So I always think about if I'm in a position to bring somebody onto the team or to include them in a project, is being very mindful about that and making those considered decisions.
yeah, exactly. So I'm going to pivot a little bit because I want to get to that elusive concept called work-life balance. It is definitely
What
something.
is that you talk about?
It is definitely something that I am still learning. I mean, 3 decades plus in this industry, in a career, and I still struggle to find this balance. I think what has helped me as I have got older and hopefully a little bit wiser is to really think about, well, what does work-life balance mean to me? Because I've come to realize that it means different things to different people. And for me, I actually enjoy coming to work. I enjoy the challenge of the work that I do, being creative, innovative, being able to sort of, spend time with all of you and the rest of the people here. I enjoy that. I also enjoy being outdoors, being healthy and trying to, keep my fitness up and going on adventures with my husband. So for me, work-life balance is about recognizing that it's not a tension between work and life. I want to be able to do all these things, and I have to find balance within my life to be able to do all of those things. And it's important, therefore, to set boundaries, boundaries with other people, and in my case, boundaries with myself.
That can be the hardest one.
Exactly.
I'm not a good listener.
I emphasize that. And so I would love to hear from all of you, what your experience has been and what your advice is for being able to find this elusive concept. So.
Yeah, I will tell you, this is the one thing I really hate talking about because I'm really not good at it at all. But I think what it's really come of time is that I'm a better communicator. I'm better at setting expectations with my family, with my staff, with my children and now my grandchildren about, how things are going to work. And my big claim to fame, if you will, on work-life balance is I went on vacation and I didn't answer a single email.
Wow.
I know. I felt a little guilty, but it was also...
Please share your secret.
It was having the great staff and letting them know that they were in charge and they had the bat line if they needed me, but it gave me that freedom to enjoy and didn't have to worry because they could reach me if they needed to.
Yeah.
They just begged me never to leave again. But that was another story.
Chris, what about you?
Well, I think all of us have tried to sort this out, and I think about it as work-life integration. And I love, Kara, something you said earlier about it being a teeter-totter. So at any given point, one side is up and one side is down, but then you get to the middle ground. And so for me, it's about making those choices and being really clear about what matters to me.
Yeah.
Who do I want to show up for? What do I want to do? How do I want to invest my time? And thinking about where I want to make an impact. So who do I want to love, touch, and inspire? And being focused on that. And those are my North Stars for making the decision, which helps me be at peace.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like that reminds me of something. It's like you can't be all things to all people all the time, but you can be the most important thing to some people some of the time. And that's
when it matters most.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think to this question of prioritization, right? I have 3 kids at home, right? And there's no way I can satisfy all 3 of those kids and my husband and myself, even if I had 24 hours a day to spend on it. So I have to be very mindful about carving out specific time with my kids. So for instance, I don't do bake sales. I don't stuff envelopes for fundraisers. I don't do any of that stuff. If I'm going to take time out of my day to spend with my kids, it'll be when I can actually be with them, whether it's in school or on a field trip or whatnot. So I have to say no to other things. And then similarly, I want them to know when I'm traveling for work, I actually love what I do. Like I miss them and I want to be with them, but I love what I do. I don't want them to feel like work is always taking me away. I want them to know that I'm fulfilled in other ways too.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And what a great role model you are for your
Well,
kids. You're
let's
setting,
hope.
you're setting a great example. Oh, and for me, I've heard a couple of people mention boundaries. Yeah, it's about setting your boundaries and knowing what's most important at that time. And sometimes you yourself are the most important thing. And we as women, I think, often neglect that self-care because we are naturally caregivers, and that means caring for others, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a child, whether it's attending to your career and caring for your team. And often we find ourselves at the bottom of the list. So I made a personal commitment this year that I was going to practice more self-care and prioritize time for me. It's not as much time as I would like for it to be, but any time with me is better than nothing. It's better than nothing. And so I do feel like that just by setting that goal and practicing that, not every day, but most often, that I'm achieving more of the balance that I seek.
Yeah, no, that's really important because, as I can tell you, I've a couple of times, at least in my career, I've burnt myself out by trying to be in all things and burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And look, at that point, you're no good to yourself, but you're no good to anybody else around you either. So that's really important.
That's right. Well, this has been amazing. I wish I could spend my entire day sitting here chatting with you ladies. That's right. But there are other priorities that are coming up next. So I just want to thank you all for your time and for the very valuable insights that you've shared. I am personally, I'm honored and privileged to call you all colleagues, and I cannot wait to share this conversation with the rest of the Kestra community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And thank you too, Chris. And on behalf of Women's Empowerment Network, thank you. And until next time.